Isaiah Thomas. Councilman Thomas, welcome to Tonight on WURD.
Thanks, Doc. Thank you for having me. Thank you to the listener audience. I appreciate you giving me the platform to be able to give folks an update as to what's going on, as well as encourage folks to stay home and stay safe.
No doubt. Councilman Thomas, did you hear that question that my last caller just posed? I wasn't aware of a FOP contract extension with a 2.5% raise and a $700 signing bonus. Are you aware of that at all? I'm not sure if he had a question. He just wanted to know if you knew about that.
I did hear your call. I am 100% aware of what took place. I've been very adamant in my advocacy as it relates to changes in the contract. For those who don't know, the FOP contract with the police expires June 30th, but it's not just the FOP contract. It's all your big city unions. And so what we're trying to do is put ourselves in a position where we're being fiscally responsible while also recognize that we need to make sure that these folks who are on the ground that are keeping us safe right now, that are getting us through this, are taken care of. And so if folks don't know, we voted last week to pass $85 million emergency funds out of the Appropriations Committee, which I sit on, as well as through the first reading and a council hearing. And we'll be voting on that final reading tomorrow at 10 a.m. For a virtual council session that's going to take place. And so when you look at that $85 million, a big hunk of that was to pay for those city employees who we now had to pay time and a half for being considered essential employees responding in the midst of emergency. For us as a city, we make out fiscally better if we make out fiscally better, and it's better for the morale of the city if we, in the negotiations, or really, it's not really ending them. You're signing it as a 1-year extension so that we can continue the negotiations once we get past this coronavirus crisis. So you can look out for contracts coming with other city union representation as well, too, not just the FOP, because what we want to do is be able to continue those negotiations. It's very difficult to have those negotiations right now when a contract expires June 30th. Okay. If we can make it past this time, then we can put ourselves in a position where we can have the level of negotiation that's needed to see some real change, specifically in the arbitration system with the police contract. So I'm not necessarily a big fan of how much money this contract costs us, but I am a fan of us getting this 1-year deal done now so we can have a deeper dive into what negotiations look like after we get through this coronavirus crisis.
So this 1 year is kind of like a patch to provide both sides or all sides of this an opportunity to have a more thorough negotiation and something that will obviously benefit the FOP, but also benefit the citizens of Philadelphia.
That's the goal. I mean, I know for us on our side, as far as the advocacy side, I'm also on a public safety committee. Mm-hmm. We're asking for things in this contract that haven't been asked for in recent history as it relates to negotiations between police and the city. And so for some of the things that we're asking for is going to require a lot of time and attention. And the amount of time and attention that the coronavirus is taking from us right now, especially considering the fact that there's so much that's still unknown, we felt like it would be best not just fiscally, but for the morale of all city employees if those negotiations were to essentially happen now so we can get through this crisis and then we can pick negotiations back up on the other side of this coronavirus crisis.
So, bro, I have so many questions for you, and for folks listening, you can certainly tune in. This is Tonight on WURD. I'm your host, James Peterson. Our guest right now is Councilman Isaiah Thomas, Councilman at Large Isaiah Thomas for the great city of Philadelphia. He'll be able to stay on with us for a little bit and take a couple questions, so you can either text those questions in on the Facebook comment page or call in at 215-634-8065. Councilman Thomas, as you know, a toddler, 2 teens, and 2 women were shot at a North Philadelphia birthday party. And I've had a lot of callers over the course of this week, very upset about that, saddened by that. I know that you take gun violence in our community very, very seriously. And I know you've been on these airways and talked about different programs and protocols in place, surveillance programs, et cetera. But for those callers who are feeling a lot of frustration around that, based upon that shooting, because I think for the citizens of Philadelphia, it doesn't make a lot of sense that we're quarantined and we're locked in and businesses are closed, but we're still dealing with that kind of brutal gun violence. What do you say to your constituents who are both outraged but also anguished by a story where a toddler, 2 teens, and 2 women can be shot at a birthday party in North Philadelphia?
It's something that's extremely frustrating, and myself as well as the other members of council, we're aware of the situation, and we actually discussed the gun violence today, specifically looking at some of the shootings that have happened over the last 72 hours in West Philadelphia, in the Point Breeze section of Philadelphia, in North Philadelphia, and it's something that's 100% on our radar. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to put ourselves in a position where we're making sure that people have the resources that they need so they don't feel like they have to commit crime, especially at a time like this. Right now, in the city of Philadelphia, you cannot be kicked out of your house. You cannot have your utilities shut off. You do not have to worry about
slow down, Councilman. We need to make sure people understand this. So the city has put a moratorium on eviction. So you cannot evict anyone in the city.
You cannot be evicted. You cannot have your utilities.
They cannot shut off any utilities. They cannot shut off your water. They cannot shut off your electric. None of that.
And we're giving away free food and more resources than what I've seen in recent history.
Where can people go? Where can people go to get access to the food services that the city's providing during the pandemic?
So what folks can do, just so it's easier, folks can reach out directly to my office. And what we do is we find out where you live, and we make sure that you have the closest locations to you where you can go get a free grab-and-go box that will provide you and your family with enough food for the week. So initially, the city was giving it out to the children, thinking about the fact that there weren't any schools. And in the midst of us evolving in how we're trying to handle this crisis that we're facing, it's been said that there are families that are in need of food, not just children. And so to respond to that, basically any need that folks have, we want to make it clear that we're here to help and support to the best of our ability, and people do not have to resort to gun violence in order to address any need or concern. Now, I know that a lot of the gun violence that we see are not about resources or lack thereof. And I understand that there's a mindset that basically says, like, look, if I don't see myself living past 21, or I don't see myself living long at all, why would I be worried about the coronavirus? I understand folks who have that mentality, but it's important that we recognize that it's up to all of us to work together to be able to change that mindset and that mentality. And it starts with identifying who those folks are and figuring out how can we intervene before it gets to that point. So we are concerned about the gun violence in the city and a number of other different issues that we're facing. And as members of council, we're willing to do whatever it takes to see the gun violence issue addressed. We know that it's about to get hot. People have been sitting in the house and will be sitting in the house significantly much longer. And we know that on the other side of this thing, we're going to see an increase in activity. We want to make sure that we're prepared to the best of our ability to combat that with resources and as much as services and programs that we can provide as possible. But at the same time, on a certain level, we got to put our social service hat to the side and recognize that we're also going to be prosecuting people and making sure that we're holding people accountable when they do decide to break the law.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder, Councilman, to what extent this crisis will shed light on some of the fundamental things that our elected leaders are having to come to terms with right now, which is, of course, we need law enforcement as part of the equation for gun violence. But what you said here is profound. And I'm just curious as to how sustainable it is beyond the pandemic, which is if people can eat, if people don't have to worry about their utility bills, if people have a fair wage, if people have affordable housing, we are going to reduce gun violence in our city. And so a lot of times the frustration makes citizens of the city really want to turn to law enforcement as the solution. But I think that the long-term sustainable solution to this has to do with the social services side of it and what we're able to do to close the sort of inequalities and the inequity in the great city of Philadelphia. And so what's the opportunity here for elected leaders to understand that some of the things that we have to address right now in a crisis moment during a pandemic are the very same things that we have to address beyond the conditions of a global pandemic?
I think you raised some great points. And if you have been paying attention, or if anyone has been paying attention to the advocacy that has been in existence on City Council, and that's not just me, that's 17 members of City Council, all advocating and fighting for different issues, from renter protection to funds and advocacy for workers who are struggling, to fighting for people who have been laid off unjustly. We recognize that these problems exist, and we recognize that these are demographics that are in need. And that's why a lot of us were elected to City Council. You got a good percentage of us who've only been in council for 3 months.
Right.
And what we tried to do prior to the start of this crisis that we're facing right now is put ourselves in a position to say, well, who are the people in Philadelphia that are in need the most? And what is it that we need to do to make sure that we lift them out of the poverty situations that they're in? And so while that was our initial bridge as far as what we campaigned on and the work that we're doing, now that we're facing this crisis, we know that that same demographic that we were advocating for are in the biggest, are the most vulnerable, and they're in the biggest need for resources. And so most of our advocacy so far as members of council has been fighting for those constituents who are the most vulnerable. Most of our advocacy to our state partners and our federal partners has been specifically thinking about small businesses and employees who've been enforced to lay off employers who represent large demographics of the city of Philadelphia. So we recognize that this pandemic has highlighted a lot of issues that we have as a municipality, but we also know that Philadelphia and the world will never be the same after this. And we need a new norm for Philadelphians if we're going to say that we're going to be even better when we come from the other side of this coronavirus crisis.
So, brother, we only have a couple minutes before we have to go to break, but I want to, and I hope you can stay beyond the break because we have callers that I would love for you to take a question or two on air. But can you give us a sense of what the calculus was for extending the shut-in, stay-at-home ruling? I think it's extended to April 30th at this point. And do you believe that that's long enough, given that some local news outlets are reporting that a tsunami of coronavirus cases is coming to Philadelphia sometime in May, not in April? So give us a sense of what went into the planning and thinking to extend it to the date that we're at right now. And do you think that there's going to be at some point another extension?
So those decisions are made by the executive branch of government, and when you're looking at decisions that the mayor is making and decisions that the governor is making, they're being advised by their team and the experts that they have around them as to what's best for us as constituents. So they don't necessarily consult with us as members of council when they decide how long these extensions will be, but we do have dialogue and we do have some level of transparency, specifically with the mayor, as it relates to how the administration is going to move. So with that being said, I vividly remember being on the show a little while back and telling folks that this was just the beginning. And if you look at what has happened in March, we're just in a trial run phase of things. I believe that we have about 1,600 positive confirmed cases in the city of Philadelphia, but we still haven't tested the capacity that we know we need to. We had 300 plus positive confirmed cases in the last 24 hours. And what ends up happening is this, Doc. Those 300 plus people, once they now find out that they've tested positive, have to communicate that information to everybody in their family, everybody in their network, and everybody they came in contact with. And now all those people have to get tested.
Right.
So it's inevitable just looking at basic rules of exponents and how this thing works from a scientific perspective. It's inevitable. The numbers have to go up before the numbers come down. This has to get worse before it gets better. And until we really can assess where we are, we can't really determine how long we're going to be down. But my theory was we were going to be down the whole month of April. Today is April 1st. And I think at this point now, folks can kind of see that we'll probably be down the entire month of April. And halfway through the month, we'll be able to assess where we are as a city and as a state and come up with some type of corrective action plan that could determine when do we get back to some level of normalcy.
We got to take a quick break, brother. Can you hold on to a couple questions for us on the other side?
Absolutely.
You're listening to Tonight on Word. I'm your host, James Peterson. We are live on WRD Radio, 96.1 FM, 900 AM, streaming on wordradio.com and the free Word app. You can download it now from the App Store or Google Play and take us with you wherever you go. My guest is the Councilman at Large for the City of Philadelphia, Isaiah Thomas. He's going to take a few questions on the other side of this break. We'd love to hear from you. Give us a call at 215-634-8065 or toll free at 1-866-361-0900. We'll be back after these messages with more tonight.
If you want to start your morning with mindfulness, motivation, and inspiration, tune in to Daybreak with me, Helana, here on WURD Radio, Monday through Friday from 6 to 7 a.m. I'm a health and wellness coach with over 15 years experience helping people to transform their lives. On the show, we talk health and wellness 360, from getting your mind right to getting your money right. So let's rise and shine together right here on WURDradio.com, 96.1 FM, 900 on your AM dial on Daybreak every morning.
Across 3 venues and over 1,900 of the world's most sought-after performers and artists, the Kimmel Center Cultural Campus is a place that fuels creativity, ignites minds, and provides inspiration. Building the city's vibrant art scene takes an extraordinary staff, and the Kimmel Center Cultural Campus has openings now. From internship opportunities to volunteer positions to careers and customer service, marketing, and even behind the scenes. Check out their current list of openings and opportunities at kimmelcenter.org. This is WURD Radio, independent Black media. The WURD Radio newsletter, keeping you informed, engaged, and connected. Sign up by visiting wordradio.com. Scroll to the bottom of the page and type your email address under Connect with Us. You'll receive the latest information on WURD Radio, messages from our president and CEO, Sarah Lomax Reese, exclusive articles and multimedia content, and resources. Stay informed with the WURD Radio newsletter. You're listening to WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD, independent Black media.
child performing Get to Know It. You're listening to Tonight on WURD. I'm your host, James Peterson. We're live on WRD Radio, 96.1 FM, 900 AM, streaming on WordRadio.com and the free WURD app. Download it now from the App Store or Google Play and take us with you wherever you go. We'd love to hear from you. Give us a call, 215-634-8065, or toll free at 1-866-361-0900. My guest right now is the councilman at large, the good brother Isaiah Thomas. Councilman Thomas, I'm going to take a call, but we have a lot of comments on the Facebook page. I don't know if you can see that from how you're on.
I tried to interact with some. I can't see all of them.
You can't see all of them. So let's take the call. Let's clear the phone lines, and then we'll go to the comments on the Facebook page. Right now we have Elias. Elias, welcome to Tonight on WURD.
Yeah, how you doing?
I'm good. Our guest is Councilman Isaiah Thomas. You have a question for the councilman?
Yeah, I don't want him to take anything personal because I'm 53 years old. I know he's a young man in this field and stuff. But what I want to say, that brother Jacob, the other guy, what was it? He said a beautiful speech regarding Elijah.
Yes, he did.
Oh, dude, we should extend his voice and his words and try to incorporate it in a commercial to the radio stations that constantly plays degrading music about glorifying guns and calling our people, our own people, the N-word and all that. Power 99. We should extend his voice because he said the most perfect thing it's touching. So with that being said, that should be done. I don't know how we can do that, but really, that should be done. Now, as far as the city council members, I'm always on them. You know, don't take it personal, sir, but city council, they all do not really care about our community, okay? That's my personal opinion because I'm a very observant person. I've raised 4 children myself. They're grown men and they're good to society, okay? My thing is there was this legislation and this bill from Cindy Bass and Miss Blackwell, who for 25 years tried to create regulations on these stop-and-go stores and these beer delis, blah, blah, blah. These stores and these bodega stores, stop-and-go stores, beer deli stores is part of perpetuating the drug epidemic in our community. And our city council members do not see this. Until we get city council members or an individual that call out our own people in our communities, okay, and tell them, you guys got to stop this adult bad behaviors in your home, we're going to continue this because our council members are always trying to powder things up to not be too harsh on our individuals in our community. We have very good people in our community, but we also have people who act like not even animals. Animals act better than the people that we have in our communities. They're committing crimes, selling dope and everything, and staying high all day. When are we, are going to do an executive order and make Philadelphia a template to regulate these mom and pop stores, these bodega stores, from selling all these different type of drug paraphernalia, be it these different flavors of tobacco wrappers and these pipes. And we've been doing this for 40-something years. I'm 53 years old. I remember 40 years ago, you go to a grocery store and all they sell is food, essentials, okay? And our city has allowed that, and I know why. There's something behind it. Everything is taxed. You know those people, when they close their store, they make more money selling all those drug paraphernalias and stuff that perpetuates the drug epidemic. They make more money out of that than the food they sell in those stores. You think those individuals care about us? Okay? They have a business organization that they sit quietly.
Brother Elias. So
all right, I know.
Yeah, let me I just want the councilman to have a chance to respond, good brother. That's all. I don't hate to cut you off. Okay, I want to have the councilman a chance to respond to some of your comments. Councilman Thomas, I think Brother Elias is talking about the corner stores, the bodegas that are in our city that sell tobacco, and what he's referring to as drug paraphernalia products. But I think the more serious claim he's making is that the city council members don't care about the citizens of Philadelphia. So I want to give you a chance to respond.
So let me start with the Cindy Bass legislation when she talked about the plexiglass. And just let me just say this. I understand what the councilwoman's intentions were, but what I want to get us away from is to say that just because someone agrees or disagrees with you on one particular issue does not speak to their intent as it relates to the Black community. A lot of these people I know personally. Some of them I'm getting to know right now. And I know for a fact that Cindy Bass is someone that does care about the Black community. I personally don't always agree with her position on every single issue, but her office is a couple steps down from mine. When we sit and we talk about these issues that we're all passionate about, whether it's safe injection sites or gun violence or issues with the corner stores, we all have the same end goal. We just sometimes have different paths as to how we get there. Now, as it relates to calling out people in the community, if you ever watch a city council session, folks give some of the most passionate monologues as it relates to gun violence and calling people out in the neighborhoods and working with local law enforcement to make sure that we're identifying places where it's high crime activity. But we all need to work together as it relates to gun violence, specifically if we're talking about addressing people in our community who we know are a nuisance. Now, as it relates to the corner store specifically, City Council last year, which was enacted this year, passed legislation to ban flavored tobacco from any type of store to be sold in the city of Philadelphia. So in thinking about that same mindset that you essentially talked about, there have been steps already taken, and there will be more steps taken to make sure that we're regulating any business in the city of Philadelphia that we feel like is a nuisance or perpetuating or condoning any gun violence that we see. So I hope I answered all your questions, sir.
No, that was good, bro. I appreciate that response. I just want to go through some of the comments on, and again, there's a lot of them. I don't think we'll be able to get to all of them. But Brother Gary says, can you ask the councilman what plan does City Council have as a body to deal with the extreme poverty and the grossly inadequate schools here in Philadelphia? And Councilman Thomas, I know you've talked about these things on this program before, but can we just go through some of the planning and the programs you've talked about? Now, again, those things might be adjusted given what's going on in the pandemic, but what's the sort of general thrust of the City Council's plans to deal with extreme poverty in the city and to deal with the challenges that we face in our public school system?
So just the brief version of that is I do sit on the education committee. We've been in dialogue with the school board as well as Dr. Height. And the first thing that we've done is try to recommend positive new people to the school board. I commend the mayor for his selection of Amin Akbar to be nominated to be a member of the school board now to replace someone who's stepping down. And Doc, as you might know or might not know, Amin Akbar is a Penn State Abington grad. Mm-hmm. So he's a person who comes from our city, who's a graduate of our public schools, who's passionate about education. So it starts with the top and the infrastructure. And from the day I stepped into council, I made that a priority for me. And I'm going to continue to make education in public schools a priority as it relates to the resources and services that we offer our children. Specifically during this coronavirus crisis, what we're trying to do is adapt to the importance of digital education and to the necessity of digital education. And so the School District of Philadelphia is in the process right now of discussing how they're going to distribute Chromebooks to every student in the city of Philadelphia who do not have a computer with an opportunity for internet access. The city is collaborating with Comcast to make sure that every student in the city of Philadelphia not only has a Chromebook, but has internet access, so we can try to address that gap that we know can potentially.
That's an incredible program. We have talked on this show about the specifics about our students having to do distance learning without the technology to do so. That's an incredible program. And we want to,
and it's very difficult for us to essentially work with the district on this specific initiative, and I give them credit for how they're trying to unveil it, because if we remember a couple weeks ago, schools closed very, very spontaneously. Right. It wasn't an opportunity for folks to plan. We didn't even get the weekend to plan. We had to figure out that Friday what would be done. So I give them a lot of credit. I also give the citizens of Philadelphia a lot of credit for their patience. But what we're going to try to do is to continue to assure that we work with our state partners. So we're addressing the digital divide. We're going to continue to work on the funding formula. While our schools are closed, Dr. Height has an aggressive initiative for folks to go into schools to remove more of the asbestos out of the schools. So unfortunately, while our children can't be in the building, we can send those experts in the building while they're not there to at least address some of the infrastructure issues that we know exist. But long term, we're collaborating with some of our state legislators to figure out what can we do on the funding side. And then again, on the other side of this thing, we want to be as innovative as possible as it relates to what public education look like and the type of curriculum that we're offering our children. Now, I'm a sports guy, so if we're talking about our children in our schools, I got to take a minute to show some level of sympathy to those athletes who are specifically seniors in high school who've had their career cut short, whether they're a winter sports athlete or a spring sports athlete. I just want folks to know that my office is talking to different people in the world of athletics to create positive platforms for those seniors to showcase their skill set so they can have an opportunity to transition into higher academia and participate in whatever athletic or extracurricular activity they may be passionate about. So it's a moving
a lot of moving parts.
A ton of moving parts, and we're trying our best to work on all those things.
So there are a lot of questions. I'm going to try to synthesize a couple of them. People were asking about that FOP or whatever the police contract that we talked about earlier on. And Lamar Bell asks, can the contract have any provisions for a civilian review board with authority to provide oversight for police? And I'm not sure exactly what's in place right now in terms of civilian review. And this might not be a question for you, Councilman. This might be a question for the commissioner.
It's fine.
Okay,
it's fine. One of the things we're advocating for is for the Police Advisory Commission, which would be the equivalent of what he's talking about, to put us in a position where they have a little more teeth and a little more dollars so they can actually investigate and make recommendations. That's literally one of the things that we're fighting for in the negotiations between the FOP and the city right now. So I appreciate that comment and know that that's something that we are advocating for.
Councilman Thomas, I neglected to ask how you're doing and how your family is doing. I know you're doing a lot of work for the city, but how you holding up, good brother, in the moment of this pandemic?
I mean, every day I have my ear on some type of Zoom call or some type of conference call, and I listen to Philadelphians all across the city struggle. So my wife, my son, and I, we're just blessed to be able to wake up every day and know that we're not missing a paycheck. And we're not missing the opportunity for our son to continue his academic journey. And so, while we are struggling being quarantined in a house like the rest of the country and most of the world right now, we are blessed that we're not facing some of the same financial hardships that other Philadelphians are facing. And these are calls that I'm listening to, from the restaurant industry to the stadium workers, to the folks on the front line as far as the healthcare workers and the trash men who are very vulnerable right now. As it relates to providing services and protection for us.
Councilman Thomas, I'm going to let you go on this question because I'm going to move into another segment on the other side of the break.
Sure.
But this next segment I'm going to do after we finish our conversation here is really trying to look forward to the 2020 election and to start to think a little bit about what is going to be our capacity as a nation to establish mail-in voting or some kind of early voting system that allows for the vote to be staggered so that physical distancing can be practiced. And I'm wondering if there's any movement at all at the local level to begin to think about what we can do locally to ensure the integrity of the 2020 election process.
So since you brought up the federal election, specifically thinking about November, I just want to remind everybody of the importance of completing the census and the census.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Census Day. That's right.
Yes, that counts big time for all federal dollars that comes back into our city. As it relates to the election, we've been partnering with both all three city commissioners, really, but especially Commissioner Lisa Daly and the Commissioner Omar Sabir, to plan what we can do to get the vote out in innovative ways. And this is something that we were doing before the coronavirus crisis. So now we're brainstorming how do we adjust to make sure that first and foremost we get the word out, but secondly we understand all the rules and guidelines as it relates to what people can and cannot do. I was on a call yesterday that specifically talked about mail-in voting. We talked to some folks from Colorado because they've been doing this for some time now. So my goal, and a lot of other people who are on my team who's just passionate about this issue, and this isn't a city council thing, this is more of my personal passion. We are talking to people from across the country who've been doing early voting and mail-in voting for some years now, and we're referring to them for best practices, rules and guidelines, and things that work as well as things that doesn't work so we can make sure that we have the best possible turnout we can. You know, I listen to folks talk about this coronavirus and different conspiracies and ideas that they have around this thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think people need to understand, no matter what your theory is, no matter what your religious belief is, we have to acknowledge the fact that a Trump presidency has made this way worse for United States citizens.
Say that.
I try my best to have a united front, and I try my best not to criticize any branch of government right now, but we have to recognize that a big part of our failure is our late response, right? And our late response is our ability not to test and our ability not to have the proper equipment that we need to protect hospital and healthcare workers, and those are federal issues. So, you know, I know that Trump has a lot of viral moments in these press conferences. I know he says a lot of things that people, for some reason, think is funny, but this is something that's very serious. A lot of citizens are going to die, and this is a prime example of us having negative consequences based on the way we vote or didn't vote. We had people who told us to vote third party in 2016.
Yes, we did.
People who told us that there was no difference between Hillary and Trump. And the one thing I'm 100% sure of is that Hillary would have taken a threat like this way more serious than the Trump administration have, and we would not be in the position that we're in right now, where we are as Americans, are sitting at home.
Hard to argue with that. You've been listening to our conversation with Councilman at Large for the City of Philadelphia, Councilman Isaiah Thomas. Brother Thomas, thank you so much for joining us here on Tonight on WURD and for taking questions from the community. Questions from me, unscripted. I appreciate that as well. Hopefully you'll come back and be on our program sometime again soon.
Absolutely. I'll be back. And please, folks, stay home, stay safe, and don't forget to complete your census form.